It might seem a bit of a strange concept to invest in a rod and reel that you're not actually going to fish with, but if you're beginning to take your feeder fishing a little bit more seriously, then an investment like this could really be worthwhile. What I've got here is the Nytro Aryzon Bait-Up rod and reel combo. Now this is specifically just for feeding your swim. You're never going to fish with this rod, but this is for times when you want to put a lot of bait in a swim quite quickly, simply, and that's exactly what this rod and reel combo has been designed for. We've got the 12-foot Aryzon distance powered Bait-Up rod. Now this is a really stiff rod. When you first pick it up and used to picking up feeder rods, it basically is like a cart rod. And the action of this has been designed to be nice and stiff and really powerful, because what you're going to be doing with this more often than not is attaching big feeders, which I'll show you in a little bit, and putting large quantities of bait out. It's got quality guides, you know, in this kind of matte finish, and like a lot of the other rods in the Nitro range, you've got this carbon curve technology within the rod running down to the handle here. You've got a nice long handle, so basically when you're going to be powering those feeders out, nice long handle, so you can really get that compression in the rod and fire feeders, you know, as far as you're going to need them. The distance that you'll be able to fish is going to be limited by obviously how far you can cast, the type of feeder that you're using, and how far you actually need to fish on the day. But it's certainly going to serve you well and allow you to put lots of bait in a swim if that's what you need to do. It's also going to be really useful for, and I do it myself, when you're fishing down the edge or when you're fishing short. Sometimes I will use a dedicated feeding rod for that as well. Even if you're only going to underarm swing the feeder in, it's the action of this rod that is the key really, because it's stiff and powerful. When you jag the rod like this to empty the feeder, because you've got the power in the rod, it really helps to empty that feeder quickly on the lake bed. If you feed with your normal fishing rod, so a softer 10, 11, 12-foot feeder rod, and you jag it and you've got mono on the reel, what can happen is that you can move the feeder without actually emptying the feeder. Whereas a stiff rod like this, and of course the braid, that's key, is going to help you to empty that feeder quickly in the swim. So the reel, it's matching by name, so it's the Aryzon Bait-Up 5000 series. It's got worm drive oscillation, obviously plenty of ball bearings, nice and smooth, but importantly it's got a really powerful handle, nice big handle, so you can get that cranking power, because you're going to be casting out and winding in probably a big feeder which might have some weight to it as well. So loads of features on this reel, I'll touch on those in a minute, but let's get a feeder loaded up and fire it out into the lake, and I'll show you what this rod and reel combo can do. Before we cast out into the lake, I just thought I'd quickly show you the sorts of feeders that you're going to use with this type of setup. Obviously I've got a really large one here. I think it's probably around 30 gramish in weight, but you can well imagine that once that's loaded up with casters, maggots, chopped worm, ground bait, or in this case pellets, you know, it's got some significant weight to it. So you're not going to be able to cast a feeder like this any distance with a normal kind of medium action 11, 12-foot feeder rod. So that's where something like this rod's going to be absolutely key. Got a slightly smaller example here. This is a 30 gram one, but again, once it's loaded up with bait, it's got some weight to it. So you do need a rod and reel combo that can cope with it. So what I'm going to do is, I've clipped up, and what we're going to do is put a couple of feeder fulls in. I'm going to show you how to empty the feeder properly for the best results, and just show you how this rod works. I've clipped up at a spot where I want to fish. I would also, in a scenario like this, put my distance sticks out on the bank so I can measure out exactly where I want to fish with my baiting up rod, and also measure out with my fishing rods as well, so I know that all of the rods I'm using are at the exact same distance. So I've got this clipped up now at the distance that I want to fish, so I'm just going to load the feeder up, and like I say, you can tell that it's a 30 gram feeder, and when it's loaded with bait, there's a fair chunk of weight there, which is exactly why you're going to need a rod like this to power something like this out. So I'm going to leave a fair drop. That's just the way that I like to do it. Leave a few feet, open the bail arm. I'm going to pick my far bank marker because I've already chosen a tree over there. I'm going to send this out to the clip. Bring the rod up, and there we go. Let it hit the clip. Allow the feeder to hit the bottom. Now that's hit the bottom. It's a few feet deep there. This lake has got some depth in the middle, so it's quite deep. I'm just going to let that feeder sit on the bottom a minute, because I just want to let that water get to the pellets and things like that while I'm fishing. The last thing I want to do is start moving the rod and spreading the feed all over the swim. Because I'm in line with the tree, I've hit the clip, it's dropped down, I've allowed it to hit the bottom. Any fishing rods I'd got set up will be clipped up to exactly the same distance, and a lot of the time successful feeder fishing is all about that accuracy. So that's been sat on the bottom for a few minutes now. I'm going to put a couple of turns on the reel so I'm not tight on the line clip. And then the beauty of this rod is, because it's so stiff, it's going to cause that bait to release really quickly. So I could feel the bait had left the feeder as I jagged it. So because the rod's so stiff, you can see there, I'm pulling that, and because you've got the braid, it's so direct that you're going to empty that feeder on the bottom. But like I say, once it's hit the bottom, just give yourself maybe 20 seconds or so. It's worth it in the long run, believe me, because your feeder will empty properly in the swim, and you'll come back with an empty feeder. Now what we've got is the bait perfectly positioned in that swim. I might have 5, 6, 8, 10 casts, however much bait I want to put in, then I know it's all in that perfect area, and I can pick up my fishing rods and I can fish on the same spot. Before we just look at a little bit more tech spec on the rod and reel, I just wanted to show you this and what I would do with this sort of feeder. Obviously pretty huge, you're going to put a lot of bait in one go, and this is the sort of feeder that I might use to fish down the edge, to put a lot of bait in to feed down the edge, or to feed a short line. So I'm just going to quickly show you that. I'm just going to load this up. It takes a lot of bait. So basically, you can deliver an awful lot of bait in one go. And because it's got the mesh on the top, you can only load it from the bottom. But again, the beauty of this rod is you can well imagine what that weighs when it's packed full of bait. Like I say, maggots, casters, worms, ground bait. You've got some serious heft there, and you need a rod to get it out. So if you're going to fish on the short line, for example, you might just want to swing this out. So if I was fishing a short line, maybe on the method, for example, or fishing a feeder only match, and I wanted to put a lot of bait in on a short line, then this is exactly what I do with this big feeder. And I can just swing it in, allow it to hit the bottom. You know, this line here, sort of a 5-6 meter line, is absolutely crucial in when the weather's better. It can be often your best line in the match, and using a rod and reel like this is still important to feed a line like this for exactly the same reasons as when you're feeding your other swim. So the stiffness of the rod, so I'm going to jag the feeder, and it's going to empty all that bait exactly where I want it. Now that you know what you're going to be doing with this rod, let's have a final look at a couple of the tech specs on it, of both the rod and the reel. So yeah, like I say, the rod's 12 foot, it's got quality guides, and it's that action on the rod. You can just see there, it's so stiff, and that's what's going to help you to empty the feeder. That's crucial. So Nytro thought about that and basically delivered exactly the right kind of rod and reel combo for the job. Quality guys, like I say, nice long handle. You've got this lovely handle and a screw down reel seat, so everything's nice and secure. You've also got this ring keeper just here underneath the blanks. That's going to be useful just for storing up, make sure you got no tangles, so you don't get any tangles or anything like that. Just quickly moving back to the reel, so the Aryzon 5000, it comes ready loaded with this braid, which I think is a massive bonus. So not only is it convenient, but also I'll touch on the price of these in a minute, but it's 0.16mm diameter, £20. So again, perfect for the job. It's 8-strand braid, so it's really strong, nice and abrasion resistant, and absolutely zero stretch, which is exactly what you want. The reel's finished in this really nice black and kind of, I guess you'd say it's gunmetal type grey, a satin type finish, but it was really, really smart looking reel. But yeah, perfect combo for delivering a lot of bait. You can also get the braid separately here as well. So this is exactly what's on the reel. So you get 200 meters, 0.16, £20, and it's the Aryzon dedicated bait-up braid, which is exactly what you're getting on the reel. Price wise, which is important as well, because you don't want to go spending an absolute fortune on a rod and reel that it's maybe hard to justify if you're just using it as a feeding rod. But the rod's coming in at $69.99 and the reel's coming up at $69.99 already loaded with that braid. So absolutely brilliant combo. If you're starting to take your feeder fishing a little bit more seriously, then I'd definitely suggest you check out this combo. And finally, if you want to know a little bit more about this brilliant rod and reel combo, check out the Nytro website.